Touchdown, Atlanta.
All right, well, it's week 14, and the postseason conversations have really started to come to life here. Who's in, who's out, who's clinched? All those conversations are starting to mean just a little bit more, and we'll talk about the numbers of the Falcons going to the playoffs a little bit later in the show. But we've got a lot to talk about today. Lots of inactives, lots of people in the trenches that will not be playing today, and as we know, that's where the games are won here in the NFL. Thank you guys for joining us for the Falcons pregame show presented by Pregame. Of course, I'm Taylor Vismor, Derek Rackley, and like I say every week, we have a lot to talk about today.
Yes, we do. Maybe a little bit more this week as far as what's going to happen on the field. But as you mentioned, we are in December, and every single week now, every game in the National Football League is important. But in December, when you're sitting in a position to get into the postseason, every single game and win is so important now.
And it's so important, this game in particular, because if the Falcons win today, their chances of going to the playoffs are way higher than if they lose. If they win today, they have an 83% chance of making it to the playoffs. If they don't win today, they are in the 30s, a 36% chance of making it to the playoffs. If they win today, an 85% chance. I mean, this is a huge deal. It's a division matchup and also looking further down the road to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, we originally were talking about the Atlanta and the New Orleans Saints kind of going back and forth.
Yeah.
But the same thing could be said here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Atlanta loses this game. They're now in a tie with the Buccaneers as far as their divisional record. They would lose the head-to-head. Well, they'd be tied at the head-to-head at that moment. But it's just you just look at how important this game is. You win this game, you're now looking at an 85% chance to go to the postseason, and now 36% if you lose the game. I mean, it just shows how important these games are once you get into December.
Yeah, and I remember speaking to Jesse Bates earlier in the year about that post-bye, how you find that snowball effect of winning a lot of these games. And he said, we're lucky that a lot of our division matchups happen after the bye, once we kind of get our footing again. And as you can see, the Falcons are in the lead of the NFC South right now. Bucs are trailing by 1 game back. Saints are 2 games back in the division. They've only won 1 division game. And then, of course, the Panthers, only team in the NFL to be eliminated from the playoffs so far.
Yeah, and to note, the Saints are playing the Panthers today. So if the Saints end up getting that victory, it proves them to 6-7. I mean, you got a logjam at the top of the NFC South. That's why this victory is going to be so important. If Atlanta can come away with a victory again against the Buccaneers, put themselves at 7-6, that's why they always say everything is under their own control right now, their own destiny, right? They continue to win, and there's no way they get left out of the postseason. But you start losing, and then all of a sudden, all the other opportunities, all the other chances, the Saints probably going to be favored to win that game against Carolina today. So you don't want to give them an opportunity to jump you with a loss. So it's a very important divisional game, the entire division playing each other this Sunday.
Exciting Sunday today for sure. So let's go ahead and talk about this Bucs matchup. We've seen them once, we beat them once, but we beat them down in Florida. We're trying to get that second win and stay undefeated in the NFC South. But what are you learning about this team, this Tampa Bay Bucs team, that has changed since the last time we saw them?
Yeah, so it's interesting that we're getting a chance to see Bijan Robinson right there because the first matchup, remember, Bijan wasn't feeling well when he woke up on Sunday morning. So I believe he got 1 carry in that game, and he spent most of the game on the sidelines with his helmet on, just kind of watching the action. We know that he's been one of the most explosive playmakers for the Atlanta Falcons on offense the entire year. All things that I know is that he's healthy today.
Yeah.
And so that's a big difference maker as far as when you get him in the game plan, and the fact that they know that they can put the football in his hands, whether that's running with the football, it's catching it out of the backfield, and maybe it's something that Tampa, yes, they have seen it on tape, but they haven't gone against it because we did play them earlier this year. They didn't get a chance to face him, so they don't necessarily know right offhand what his quickness is like, what his top-end speed is like, what his physicality is like when he goes in between the tackles. And we've seen so many times this year, Taylor, where he's stuck a foot in the ground and make a defender miss on occasion after occasion after occasion. Maybe we get a chance to see him do that against Tampa today because they didn't see him in the first matchup.
Exactly, and you can watch all of his tape from the other games. When he's going up against your defensive scheme, it makes it a little bit different, a little bit easier to study him as a running back. But someone that they have been studying and someone that they didn't take advantage of, but they took advantage of the things that he did wrong was Desmond Ridder.
Yeah.
Desmond Ridder had 3 turnovers against Tampa in Week 7, and Desmond is hoping to turn things around today and really solidify his name as a starting quarterback in the NFC South.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those tapes where not only is he going to learn from as far as how Tampa tried to attack him the last time, he's also going to learn from it to say, I can't cough the football up like it happened last time. Remember, he had the touchdown. He was running into the end zone for a touchdown and got the ball knocked loose and ended up being a turnover. I mean, that's 7 points that gets taken off the board. Atlanta still wins the game 16-13, but you think about the change, then maybe this is now a 20-13 game that's not so needing a field goal at the end of the game to win it. So many things that Desmond Ridder this entire season has tried to learn from, but when they turned on the tape, because I can tell you, when you're playing a team for the second time, a lot of your tape study during the week is what happened in the first matchup. How did the specific players that we are going to play on Sunday, how did they attack what we did? And then you try to figure out, okay, what worked for us and how can we accentuate that? And if it didn't work, let's not put it part of the game plan for this time and let's find some new wrinkles. Just to show you how close of a game that was the last time when they played in Week 7, Atlanta comes away with a 16-13 victory. Look at some of these numbers. Passing yards separated by about 11 yards. First downs, basically the same. Third down, very close. Time of possession, almost right on the nose. And both teams with 9 penalties in the game for around 60-65 yards. That shows why this game was so close. These two teams played a very close matchup. Which team can provide the edge in this one? I can tell you this, Tampa has not been running the football all that great this year, and especially in the first matchup, Atlanta was able to hold them to 73 yards rushing on 20 carries. That's about 3.7 yards per carry, but here's the asterisk there. Remember, Baker Mayfield had a 31-yard run in that game. That factored into that 73 yards. If there's a way that this defense can tighten up and not allow him to get one of those explosive runs, now that looks like a suffocating performance in the run game. And we know that Atlanta's strength on the offensive side of the ball is using their run game and the play action pass off of it. So that's the advantage, and you hope that at home, when you're able to communicate, you're not having to fight the noise, that they can have that good balance. They can get Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier going in the run game. It's going to open up everything else in the passing game.
Yeah, so you mentioned Baker Mayfield, and I want to discuss him very briefly because he has a wide receiver one that he uses a lot, and he is on an enormous tear right now. Mike Evans, of course, and he also has Chris Godwin, two guys that are hard to cover.
Yep. Mike Evans has been one of the most dominant, and I say dominant just because his stats continue to back it up. And we'll talk a little bit more because I'm going to give you a little bit of a secret. It's going to be part of my keys toward the end of the game. But he's just been so consistent. This guy is always playing. He's always on the field. And when he does, he makes an impact. So you look at Mike Evans, what he does. The last game, he ended up having, I believe it was 6 catches in that game. He did score a touchdown, but he didn't take over the game. But he is over 1,000 yards again for his 10th straight season, which is extending his NFL record. But he's only had 3 games, believe it or not, where he's had over 100 yards receiving. But all 3 of those games have been dominant, like big time. 162, 143, and 171, and he scored touchdowns in all of those games. So he's obviously one of those big focal points that Baker Mayfield likes to get the ball in his hands. Last time Atlanta played against Tampa, Baker Mayfield threw the football 42 times. He's an aggressive, down-the-field style quarterback. So what that means to me is if I'm Jesse Bates, if I'm the rest of the guys in the secondary, there's going to be opportunities for you to get turnovers, to get your hands on the football. And when that opportunity presents itself, you got to take advantage. It might be only 1, 2, maybe 3 balls that end up in harm's way. You have a chance to get your hands on it, but you got to make the play. And if they're not able to run it effectively like they haven't been, they have no problem letting him throw it 40 to 45 times. And when that happens, you have more opportunities not only for turnovers, but also for your pass rush to get after the quarterback, and Atlanta's going to have to take advantage of that.
Exactly. Jesse Bates has 5 interceptions on the season so far. That's his career best. He's on a tear right now, and he's on track to have his career high in every single statistical category. It's been really fun to watch Jesse Bates go to work. But speaking of safeties and cornerbacks, there are a lot of people that are inactive for both this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team and the Atlanta Falcons. So let's just go ahead and get to those Bucs inactives list. Obviously, Jamel Dean will be out, and Devin White, huge misses, as well as Vita Vea as well.
Yeah, I mean, those are 3 starters on the defensive side, and we've talked a lot about Vita Vea on our podcast during the week and sometimes on the pregame show here. This guy can be a problem. I mean, he's one of the better interior defensive linemen in the National Football League, so strong, had the ability to compress the pocket. He's been dealing with a toe injury, so he's going to be out of this game. Jamel Dean, one of the starting corners, is going to be out. And, of course, Devin White, who plays opposite of Levante David in the inside linebacker position. All 3 of those guys are defensive starters that are going to be out. Keyshawn Vaughn, also a backup running back, gets into the rotation, is not going to be on the field. But the fact that there's 3 really good difference-making defensive players that are not going to be on the field. Again, an area where Desmond Ridder and this offense is going to have to take advantage of those guys not being on the field.
Yeah, and Jamel Dean was had the second most tackles against the Falcons in week 7, excuse me. So that's a huge miss for Dean to be out today. Let's go ahead and get to the Falcons inactives, because this is where the story lies. Jeff Okudah out, Nate Landman out, Caleb McGarry out, David Onyemata, Drew Dahlman. All of these guys are starters for both the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. This is the most injuries we've seen on an injury report so far this season.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about, Taylor, this entire season, how Atlanta has kind of avoided the injury bug, if you will. They've been a pretty healthy team for the most part of the season, but this is kind of the first week where you see all of these starters. 5 out of the 7 guys that are inactive are regular starters for the Atlanta Falcons. And, of course, being on the line as a scrimmage with Caleb McGarry and Drew Dahlman being out, with David Onyemata out. Those are cause for concern if you're a coaching staff. Not to take anything away from the guys that are going to be filling in, but there's a reason that you have starters and there's a reason that you have backups in the National Football League. So I was telling you right before we came on the air is that this is where coaching comes into play. Sometimes you have to work to your strengths and you have to minimize your weaknesses. So don't be surprised if you see a little bit of a different play calling structure from Arthur Smith on offense, knowing that he's going to be missing one of his tackles and his center. Maybe he starts doing a little bit more rollout. Maybe he starts doing some more screen passes than what we're used to. Maybe he ends up going to the left side on running plays more than he ends up going to the right. He talked about in his press conference this week that they felt like they had a lot of confidence in Ryan Newsel, who's going to be filling in. But there's a difference between having confidence on the practice field and then that actually happening in the game. Yeah. But the fact that, again, that I said for somebody like Ryan Newsel, the fact that Vita Vea is not going to be playing in this game is big for him, because he is a guy that after the snap can create some issues on the defensive line. And then, of course, the secondary, you go back to earlier in the week when you saw both A.J. Terrell and Jeff Okudah on the injury report, I was thinking, oh, goodness, this could be bad. And fortunately for the Falcons, that A.J. Terrell was able to clear concussion protocol and he'll be back in there. But they're going to be without Jeff Okudah. Yeah. The Falcons know how to do this. Okudah was not there early on in the season, so they're going to have to play some different guys at the corner position. But again, do one of those guys get matched up against Mike Evans one-on-one with a shot down the field? You know that Baker Mayfield's going to be looking for it. He's going to be finding where's A.J. Terrell and what's my matchup on the other side. And if it's Mike Evans, that's where he's going to try to take advantage. So if you're one of the backup corners, you got to come in. Trey Flowers, Clark Phillips, you got to know that Mayfield is a savvy veteran. He's going to find where you are, and he's going to try to take advantage of it, because we know they like to press the ball down the field. So what happens? This is life in the National Football League. This is next man up. Yes. You've got to come out and you've got to perform when one of your teammates gets hurt. This defense has been salty all season long. We'll get to that in just a second, but don't make this be an excuse because we're missing Jeff Okudah, because we're missing Nate Landman on the inside, that the defense starts to give up some more plays. Don't worry about it. Step up and go out there and make plays. There's a reason why you're on the active roster.
Yeah, you mentioned that next man up mentality, and Ryan Nielsen, the defensive coordinator for the Falcons, has been really prideful about having that next man up mentality in the locker room for the defense, and that, especially that defensive line and that interior there. But for those guys that are out, here is who will probably and most likely will be stepping in for them. For Jeff, will probably be Trey Flowers. He stepped in for him in the beginning of the season. Obviously, Clark Phillips came in last week for A.J. Terrell. Did a fabulous job, but Trey is normally on that side with Jeff as well. Nate Landman will be out, but Tay Davis will step in for him today. Obviously, Nate Landman came in after Troy Anderson was placed on IR, so now Tay Davis has the chance. He hasn't played since the Dolphins game down in Miami. Same with Ryan Newsel. He was the center for the Miami game down there for the preseason game, and he will be starting again for Drew Dahlman.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I remember when Troy Anderson got hurt, there was like some cause for concern there. Like Nate Landman, a guy that we haven't seen a whole lot, is going to come in and fill in. How is the inside linebacker position going to work? I think if you've been watching the Atlanta Falcons over the past 6 or 7 weeks, you're going to say, guess what? Nate Landman did a pretty darn good job. Yeah. And now the tables have been turned a little bit. Now we're thinking about, okay, how's it going to go without having Nate Landman in the lineup? It's next man up. Maybe this is Tay Davis's opportunity to come show the world that he is a very viable inside linebacker in the National Football League. Same could be said for Storm Norton, likely going to be filling in for Caleb McGarry. You got to go out there and perform. It's the reason why you're on the roster. Right. So there's no reason to make excuses here. Yeah, maybe the coaches make some differences in play calling, but you still got to go out there and perform.
Yeah, with Tay Davis and Nate Landman, remember back in preseason, it was a big question mark when cutting down those rosters, who was going to get that second linebacker position between Nate and Tay. Obviously, Nate won that position behind Troy Anderson, but Tay was right there. They were going tit for tat all preseason long, and it was really fun to watch those two work and kind of compete with each other. Tay Davis gets the gets some reps today, obviously, with that start. But speaking of Tay Davis, staying salty on D, let's go ahead and get to the keys to the game presented by Wells Fargo. Go ahead. I think we've said it twice already, but go ahead with your first key.
Continue to stay salty on defense. I think they've been the driving force, the reason why the Atlanta Falcons have won their last 2 games. Their defense has played great. They have not allowed a touchdown over the last 9 quarters, and they have not allowed a touchdown in back-to-back games. The only team in the National Football League to be able to say that they have not allowed a touchdown in back-to-back games this year. They've really embraced that bend but don't break. There's been some games where they give up some explosive plays. The Saints got a few of them. They got down in the red zone. What happened? They didn't break. They got the stops that they needed to. They forced the field goals. So stay salty on defense. We know that Baker Mayfield's going to take some shots downfield. We know he's going to tuck it down and he's going to run on occasion. But make sure you make the plays, and if they do get down in the red zone, stop them. Yeah. Force a field goal. Here's what I know. If teams in the National Football League don't score touchdowns, you got a great chance to winning, even if you have your struggles on offense.
Exactly.
So if we can continue that to 3 games without allowing a team to score a touchdown, I think it gives them a great chance to win this game.
Yeah, and you mentioned bend, don't break, and you mentioned the red zone. That's been the biggest story coming out of Atlanta for the last 2 weeks. In the last 2 weeks, the opposing team has gotten to the red zone 6 times. 5 of those times was the Saints. They got to the red zone 5 times, but 2 of those times turns into turnovers by Jesse Bates, and then last week against the Jets, they only made it to the red zone 1 time. So it's going to be really fun to watch and see with all these inactives if they're going to be able to bend and not break.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where you're going to have your leaders step up. Caden Ellis is going to have to step up. Jesse Bates is going to have to step up. Calais Campbell, not just as far as production, but just leadership, making sure you've got all these new faces on the right page. If they can do that, they're still going to have a great chance to be able to perform on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, so let's talk about defending that ball. What's our second key to the game today?
Yeah, it's going to be simple here. Someone other than Evans. And what does that mean? Somebody other than Mike Evans needs to beat Atlanta on defense. And I'm not saying that somebody needs to beat them, because it could be nobody. But just don't let it be Mike Evans. We talked about what he's done already this year. But again, his 10th straight season of being over 1,000 yards, and that extends his own NFL record. Again, coming off a 162-yard game last week against Carolina. And think about this. 6 of the 12 games this year, he's had double-digit targets, right? So they continue to go in his direction. Yeah. They're going to do it again today. Just make sure that it's somebody other than Mike Evans. You don't want to look up and this be a 7 for 162 and 2 touchdowns for Mike Evans. That's not going to spell well for Atlanta.
That'll probably be a competition between A.J. Terrell and Mike Evans today, so be able to make sure to watch out for those two dueling it out and duking it out all game long. But with that, with Mike Evans, obviously you have another wide receiver on the other side, but then you have Rashad White. Yep. And he's the running back for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, and they've really spread the ball out between the air and the ground, and Rashad has been there all season long. And the last 2 games have been season highs for them in terms of rushing the ball. So it's going to be interesting, especially with David Onyemata out and that rush game, breaking down a little bit for the defense. It's going to be interesting to see why they play today.
Tampa has not been able to punch the football into the end zone a lot this year via the run game. That's one area that they've struggled. They got 6 rushing touchdowns this year. 5 of them are from Rashad White, but they're going up against an Atlanta defense that's only given up 4 rushing touchdowns, which is tied for the best in the National Football League, along with the Baltimore Ravens. So if they can continue that, even if Tampa does get down into the red zone, they get close to the goal line, they've been pretty good about not letting running backs get into the end zone, making somebody else beat them. So we'll see if they can continue that again.
And you mentioned how Baker likes to air it out to Evans and to Godwin. So what's the third and final key today?
Continue to win the turnover margin. Made strides again against the New York Jets last week. They won that turnover differential 3-0. They're now improved to -3 on the season. Remember, this is a team that's been kind of living at -8, -7, -6 this year in a turnover margin. When you got Tampa that comes into this matchup, oddly enough, at +5 in a turnover margin, and they have 18 takeaways on defense. So what does that tell me? They've got some guys on the defensive side of the ball that can and have shown that they will take the football away if you give them opportunities, not just interceptions, which they've got plenty of those, but also forcing fumbles and finding ways to get the ball back to Baker Mayfield. So winning the turnover margin obviously is both sides of the football. It's Desmond Ridder and anybody that touches the ball to have ball security. But on defense, find those opportunities. We talked about it. Baker Mayfield's going to take those chances. go get one of those when he takes a chance downfield. Or if it's Rachaad White running the football, Jesse Bates maybe comes in with another right hook and knocks the football out like he's done throughout this season. So find a way to win that turnover margin once again.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting game. Those are your 3 keys of today's game in this divisional matchup, the last matchup against Tampa Bay this season. Hopefully the Falcons can stay undefeated in this division. But, guys, there's so much happening behind us right now. It's like almost distracting because Mercedes-Benz Stadium is the place to be. They do Atlanta United, they do Atlanta Falcons, they do SEC Championship was here. I'm still not over it. I don't want to talk about it. But there's so much happening here all throughout the year, and so they have to convert this field for MLS to NFL to NCAA regulation. So much goes into it, and I actually went down with their grounds crew to learn about the conversion of this field painting, and I actually got to paint a little bit of it too. So go ahead, take a look.
Hey guys, we're painting the field.
I'll get you to dot out the red if you're up for it. I'll show you how to do it. I shall, I promise.
Yes.
So I oversee all field prep for United or Falcons and everything outside regarding landscape, Home Depot backyard.
How's that?
Perfect.
Look, I'm quitting my job. I'm becoming grounds crew.
A few moments later.
Yep, twist.
This is not my job, guys. This is not my day job. So how long, on average, ballpark, does it take to paint this field for a game?
On an overnight, we can get it down to 8-10 hours, but we'll have everybody running around doing a bunch of different things. I told her she can paint the heart of the Falcon.
Yeah, I gotta paint the heart.
Yeah.
I can definitely fill in the lines, color within the lines. We're gonna give him a heart.
All right, I gave the Falcon life. I gave him a heart. I gave him the heart of and a life to live. So he's down there on the field right now as
that was previously, right? That wasn't today?
No.
Because I saw some crooked lines going on there.
Come on, man. Give me a break. That's not my job. Come on.
Nothing
Anyway,
crooked here, though.
Let's get to the elephant in the room right now. Ray Buchanan is with us. He is part of that historic 1998 team. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
We spent a lot of time together over the summer just recapping that whole season for you guys. Obviously, they were broing it out a little bit. They played together.
Earlier.
So what are some of your favorite memories from 98 or just your time here as a Falcon?
I mean, my time here as a Falcon, I mean, overall, it was just amazing. Just coming in and you think about a house that Deion said that he, built. I just wanted to come in and just like maybe just keep it up, paint work here or there, and just play my part because it was a city that loved to be entertained. And when I got here, that's what I thought about. I wasn't just thinking about myself and how I actually played. I knew what the city actually needed, and I just wanted to do my part. But more importantly, I think that being an Atlanta Falcon meant a lot, and it actually helped me grow.
Ray, it's interesting that you mentioned coming on the heels of Deion Sanders and what he brought to this organization with the flair and the confidence. And should I reset confidence again? But when I came in 2000, it seemed like that was kind of your role, was the guy that was going to have fun, was going to show the utmost confidence. I mean, I remember some of the battles you had in practice just going up against our receivers, just talking mess to them and everything.
Yeah.
Is that something that, because you came into the league with the Colts, did you have that when you were with the Colts, or did that start when you came here with Atlanta?
No, I already actually had it. It was already in me, since college. But as I got to groom myself and getting more and more confident and studying, preparing, knowing my body, knowing, a lot of things that when you start studying the game is really 90% mental, 10% physical. I had the 10% physical down. It's just now a mental game of actually getting the clarity and make the game slow down. But to answer that question, Big Play Ray, when they started to give me that name, it did start at Indianapolis and then leading into here, that's where it actually came. But the guys that was on this actual team, you think about the guys that I had to face, Terrell Owens, Randy Mosses. I can go down the list of all these different Hall of Famers playing. I had to get it in practice first. So what you're talking about, we held each other accountable in practice. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to go against a scout team guy right now. No, Terrence, Mathis, get over here.
Yeah.
You know, Tony Martin, get over here. I need guys that's going to prepare me to get ready for the game. But we held each other accountable. That was something special about that 98 team.
You mentioned practice, and we talked a lot about y'all's relationship with the head coach, Dan Reeves, and how he came in and just really set a new tone. Can you speak to that a little bit about what was so special about Dan Reeves?
Well, Dan came in, you know, with the mindset of knowing that he had to, root the team out a little bit and bring in the guys that's going to actually buy into his system. He brought in coaching staff, people in the upper management, and then to the players, bringing in a lot of veterans that knew the game, that actually wanted to play for each other. It wasn't a lot of individualism. We had a lot of different characters out there, but at the same time, we had guys that played collectively. So he was bringing in guys that fit their role, that knew how to play as a family. Dan Reeves was a family guy first, and then, he was able to get things out of us. And we didn't always need Dan to get on us. He brought in guys that he knew that they was going to hold each other accountable, and we held each other accountable without sensitivity. So if a guy got on you, then they got on you, just got to take it. But that's just the way Dan, made up the team, and he was a big pivotal part of what we did, especially that year.
Ray, we obviously know how the 98 season concluded, but what were some of the biggest memories, the things that if you're looking back at things now 25 years later, you can look back and say that 98 season, gosh, I'll never forget that moment or that moment?
Well, you know what? I'm going to bring up first, playing San Francisco 3 times.
Yeah.
Them 2 times was like during the season. They got us the first one. Then the second one, then we knew that we was heading in a different direction as a team. We got to get past San Francisco. Once we got past San Francisco, we had to play them again, and then we knew we were going to win that game, even though it was a tight game, but we had the mindset that we're going to win. Everybody had the mindset. Then to sum it all up, though, little Rack, I just got to be honest with you, 98. Championship, nobody gave us the odds to beat Minnesota. We were big-time underdogs going into that game. Nobody really believed on the outside, but people inside of that building knew what we had to do. And the matchups, went, pretty complete during that game because the way the coaches did. Rich Brooks did a real good job of setting things up, defensive coordinator, and then on the offense side of the ball, Dan Reeves and them, they actually hung in there. And we were losing at the first half. And that locker room speech, we came out and played, and everybody just stuck together. Wasn't a lot of pointing fingers in that. Everybody just came in and just did their job.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of talk about that game because, Ray, I ended up coming here as a rookie in 2000, but back in 98, I was at the University of Minnesota. And I'm literally across the river while you are playing that game. And as a Minnesotan at the time, you grow up and you're kind of a Minnesota Vikings fan just by default, right?
Right.
And you're right. Everybody in Minnesota, I'll give you an example. My parents got Super Bowl tickets, in the playoffs. Not after they beat the Falcons, but everybody was getting their Super Bowl tickets because nobody thought that anybody was going to beat the Minnesota Vikings with what they did. So how did that halftime speech change things for you to go out and win that game?
They'd never been in a battle before. They played one game that year against Miami that was pretty tough. That was the only game they actually had lost. But pretty much everybody was they were beating up teams, and then they can do what they want. They was averaging 40-something plus our points a game. Yeah. And, looking at the film was just like looking at horror flicks. And I'm like, nobody's challenging these guys. They have never been in a dog fight. So we figured if we can get these guys in a dog fight going in right before halftime, and when we came back out in that third quarter, they looked different. They didn't have the same swag. And going back to what you just finished saying about how disrespectful it felt for us, but you talking about, parents had Super Bowl tickets already. We were getting here and we were seeing T-shirts already. Fans had T-shirts for Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That whole. When we got there, we felt disrespected.
We didn't even play the game.
We didn't even play the game, and these fans. I'm like, wait a minute, we didn't get here just by default. 14-2 is something special. Yes. But y'all better put some respect. They say spec on our name, and we really went out there and really took it personal. And they, while we were standing on the podium, too, this is a good piece, too. While we were standing on the podium holding up the championship trophy, not saying this boastfully, but here comes, guys like Chris Carter and Randy Moss, and they were weeping. They were like, y'all took this game from us. Well, they took. No, we played. We beat y'all. Why? Don't be a sore loser. And I was like, and these are Hall of Fame guys, and I really knew how they actually felt because I've been there. I've been on an AFC championship team against Pittsburgh with the Indianapolis Colts. And losing by a Hail Mary throw and looking at Pittsburgh go play the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. I knew what he felt, because he's a great player. They did everything right that year but win that game to go to the Super Bowl. And, so that's what made it that so special, though, right? For real.
You talk about Randy Moss crying. I remember during when we did that sit-down interview, that panel discussion, which is on YouTube. So go ahead and watch it if you haven't watched it yet. It's really great. We go through like almost every single game of that season together. But one of my favorite parts is when Jamal Anderson was saying that the producers handed him the trophy, and he was like, "You wanted me to generate some tears? The thespian that I am? Absolutely!" And he like ran around with the trophy. But this is your you never played in this stadium. This is a newer stadium, obviously. What brings you joy, or kind of brings you back, and what are you excited about today to be back here as a Dirty Bird?
You know, I mean, bringing everybody back collectively. Haven't seen guys. Some of these guys I haven't seen for 20 some odd years. So it's like that part of it. You know, getting the camaraderie together, and then starting to talk about different moments. You know, with the ex-players, and then showing love to each other, saying, I appreciate you. Thank you for that play that you made, or thank you for being that teammate. A lot of us, just haven't seen each other. It was like a lot of emotional moments, of everybody getting together. But now we getting together in this particular time, and then looking at what the Falcons are going through at the same time of winning. These fans are just amazing. Like, a lot of guys coming back in town and then having the opportunity to relate with them. Like, everybody didn't have an opportunity to do that. They sort of dispersed after they were gone. But now that everybody's here to be celebrated, and during a heated moment right now, especially during the heated battle with the Atlanta Falcons going up against Tampa today, it's just a perfect setup, perfect game. And, I'm not going to go into what I did during the Super Bowl predicting anything, but I know this game is special for us as 98, and bringing in a lot of the legends, being able to come and catch up with each other. And, hats off to Nicole, that's actually putting everybody together. She did a real good job of, because it's a lot of guys. You got a lot of different characters, a lot of, some guys are a little bit higher than others of what they want, but, when they know what we mean by being prima donna sometimes, but I made it so easy for them. I'm so laid back, Rack. I'm just so cool. And the Falcons organization did a real good job, awesome job of getting everybody together. And everything, from A to Z, since Friday all the way up through today, it's just been amazing.
Taylor, things have changed a little bit. When Ray says that he's been so easy, he's been so cool to deal with. Remember, this is Big Play Ray. Big Play Ray wasn't just always chill and easy to deal with. Ray was about, come get some over here.
I had to rein these guys in for like an entire day between him and Jamal. It was just chaos at points, but it was so fun to recap that season. Thank you for coming here and recapping it a little bit more on air. But if you do want to watch that feature, it's part 1 and part 2 of part 1 is regular season, part 2 is the postseason. They're on YouTube now, just go ahead and watch that. It's been so fun. Thank you so much for joining us for the pregame show.
Appreciate it.
We'll see you next week in the studio against Carolina Panthers, back-to-back divisional matchups. But today, it's against the Bucs. Let's see if the Falcons can stay undefeated in the division.
Rise up.